I finished completely painting my new army of killer dwarf for fans of Warhammer, Kings of War, OPR, of I don't know what other rule of the Age of Magic for Saga, for example. In short, all fans of medieval fantasy worlds. I'll give you a description from now on. Normally, by the time you see this video is available, a full army of killer dwarf. Why? Because it is. Figures I couldn't find when I was a kid that were all metal. There was no plastic version, and I don't even know if it exists today to be able to make a complete army of nature, and so it's linked to a frustration when I was a kid, simply not being able to make my army of nature. And then I said to myself, come on, you are never better served than by yourself. So I started sculpting a little more than 50 models. Who make a complete army of beginners, dwarf killers, veterans, venerables. So it's really the sweetest of them, wolf riders, in short, full of siege weapons too. A tank too, because I wanted to make a tank pulled by buffaloes, quite simply. What I'm proposing is that we pass. I finished painting it. I was hoping to finish painting it before the launch of this project, so I could still publish some photos, because it's important that people can see concretely what they will have in their hands when it is printed. Don't rely on 3D all the time. Really, that's it. It's maybe one thing that changed the perception of figurines for quite some time. Is that the 3D renderings are completely crazy today, and the quality that is amazing. One really gets the impression of splendid figurines in a number of cases. It's true, the figures are really very beautiful and the sculptors do a great job, but you must not lie to yourself either. And in some other cases, the 3D renderings give the impression that it's cool, and in fact it's not cool. Well, at least I will show you concretely on the table what you will have in your hands then, and then we take stock at the end. Here we are in front of the dwarf army, so killers, all with their really well flashy orange crest. It's not so flashy here. I hope the colors are not too altered. Moreover, in this video, there for information, what you see on the table, there is not a single identical figurine. That is to say that really each of the models present on this table are all different. And I voluntarily chose to print only one model of each figurine each time. But obviously, like all Wargames games, it is made to be printed at will and thus make you much larger regiments. There, for example, concerning the venerables, so there are 10 which are all different. You have the general staff of the 3 figurines with, so I'll try to... Here's to refocus. So you have the staff with the standard bearer, the champion and the musician. And then you still have this figure that you are free to reprint at will to make regiments of 20 figures, for example. For info, the sub-bases that you see I have not put in the pack, but they are totally free, downloadable. I'll give you the link in description. There, for example, we will have a base of 20 figurines rather than these sub-bases of 10. So that's the point, it's also to reprint. As I told you, I voluntarily did something very old school. It's voluntary, I know not everyone likes it. I was really in a revival phase of the 2000s, or even a little before, and being a star now is really an army of heart, and I try to have fun on a lot of models. There, for example, you have a servant of the crash flam cannon with a kind of big wrench. Another of the servants who had a bucket in his hand filled with disgusting oil, or we don't know what, a rag. They both have one serving pushing the object because they are on wheels for the most part, so there is just to stick it, finally to slap it behind the model. I'll shift it to show you. And you see, it feels like he's suddenly pushing the siege weapon to move, which is even more believable with the Goblin Slicer, which has no form of logic on how it works. It's a siege weapon like that, and they say it works. There you go. I did simple in paint, but it's enough, and again you have one behind who is pushing the vehicle forward. Another kind of servant. You see that I also varied the beards, I varied what they have in their hands, the poses, etc. This is the free figure you could have if you are pre-registered on the project, because I think it's a bit badass. Here with an axe in each hand, rather class. But I can show you a few others there. For example, we have the gentleman who has a beard a little more worked than the others, again a little more pronounced also, because the gentleman drinks a lot of beer, a two-handed axe that almost holds in one hand. We have the general standard bearer of the army. So he, in terms of painting, I am a little disappointed with myself. I wanted to try to vary the shades a little, particularly at the level of the standard, to make a kind of cape of, finally a standard of dragon skin that would have been killed, or a baby dragon in this case. Because here it is on the scale, it would be much larger otherwise. And then in the back, for example, a cape rather based on Hivern skin. So I wanted to vary the colors, and in fact I find that it does not marry well with each other, but it's not serious. At least it has a story, at least in my head, and it's a little what counts the most when you make an army. I also did the big freaks with axes that I clearly don't want to tell me. So these species of H with chained flail tips, which are themselves chained to other H. So as much as I can tell you that it is, in my opinion, as dangerous for the user as for his opponents. So there are 3 different ones in different poses, each time with the chain that drags to the right or left. There is 1 champion for each unit. So the champion of the Venerable is he. So I gave him a really basic break with an absolutely huge axe that fits in his hand. A ridge a little bigger than the others. Right there you have the champion for veterans. He has a small spear axe in his hand. He has 1 to 2 hands behind his back and 1 to 1 in his right hand. You see, I chose to do the blue because I thought it contrasted, that it went well with the orange and the flesh color, which is very, very present on this army. Ah yes, you also have him there, the equivalent of a tan, a kind of, I was going to say sacrilegious dwarf mage. Certainly not a dwarf mage, but someone who is able to wield standard bearer runes. I had fun making little dwarf runes on it, just to do it with a big axe in my hand. What else do you have if you have the Valkyrie? Where is the Valkyrie? She's hidden there, so there it's really just for delirium. I made a dwarf. A dwarf who has a deliberately old-school pose, old-fashioned, who has an axe in each hand, her hat typed a little Gaulish, in any case, Asterix what, and then a hatred, that's a dwarf who likes to eat what. And then after, so there are, yes, there are the howlers too, the howlers of wolves, so well, there you go, dwarfs on wolves, mountains, grey wolves. I was hesitant to make them in another color, wolves, and I wanted it to contrast. I was thinking of making brown wolves, you know, which pull a little on very dark brown or even black. Then in fact I wanted it to contrast strongly between the skin tones and the gray. So here I made them in gray simply. Same, there are 3 different ones, but free to print them in several copies to make a regiment, for example, of 10 on the wolf chariot, right? And then there's the war chariot, right? Shooted by huge buffaloes. So on this one, I'm going to vary the painting styles a little bit. For example, on the buffaloes, it is a lot of paint typed contrast or speed paint, so there is finally very little work. It's really an undercoat and a zenithal of white, and then an application of tint, while, for example, on the flesh of the main character, there is work a little more to the old, even if it remains a level of painting, all in all, quite standard. And so here it is, and then he's totally part of it. Why? Well, because often in war games, whether it's Kings of War, Warhammer, OPR, or I don't know what other fantasy rule, you can use war chariots like that to make regiments, so have several. So the buffaloes are separated from the cart, and the character is also separated, which means that you are totally free. Not to put this lord there and to put, for example, only dwarves like that inside. In short, you put what you want so that it makes a war chariot full of dwarves what. And then finally we finish with, here's a little dwarf totem because it's cool. I have no idea what it's for, but it will look nice on the battlefield and it can make a little objective shot. Nice what? And then the entrance to the mine because, well, they are dwarves. So if you really needed a mine entrance, just to complete the collection. So that's it. At least I wanted to show you a little bit of what it looks like when all the models of this army pack are 3D printed and painted. And then I'm going to show you some other little things I'm already working on. So there are more than 50 models, all absolutely unique. There is no such thing. It has been a lot of work, but it is also a lot of fun. I hope that the people who will participate in this project will have as much fun printing and painting them as I did making them. And then, since I'm in my revival period of the 2000s, wargame fantasy at its core, this is clearly not the only army that I want to do completely like this and at a clearly affordable price. That is to say that really at the time of launch, this army is 25 € for all the 3D files, which is still really not very expensive for so many models, while it is a lot of work. Eventually it will be $50. Well, yes, $50, so which makes about 4,200, something like that, at least at the time I made this video. So it's still a little more expensive, even if it remains clearly acceptable, because overall it's the prices in which we can simply get a little more into our costs. But at the time of financing I wanted to make it really cheap, and the goal is to keep it going. The point is that I want to make more, so for the year 2026 I'm launching 1.1. Small personal challenge also to continue to progress in sculpture, continue to try to provide you always more figurines. Cool or not, it depends on the taste of each one after, but in any case, from my point of view, I find them more and more cool, which help the painting also, which have dynamic poses without swarming with too many details that will complicate enormously precisely the painting then, but so that it is not seen. Finally, all this is, at the time of the sculpture, is really taken into account, and in short, I want to challenge you to release many other armies like this. I think that 2026 will therefore see the arrival of, maybe even at the end of 2025, there may be another army, because I have already made good progress on it. I have even advanced on another army still behind. And the idea would be to make 6 until the end of 2026, offering one overall every 2 months at around the price of $25, which would allow me to make a non-negligible complement, depending on the success of this kind of thing too. So we're going to start with the killer dwarves, of course, because that's the heart army. Then we're going to go on goblins, because I love goblins, and it's the same. When I was younger, I really wanted to have a huge army of goblins, which I couldn't do. And now with 3D printing, it's really cheap to print a big army, so I'll be able to enjoy myself. I'm going to show you a few of them, and then I'll tell you a little bit about the rest. For this goblin army, I'm in my phase of crash test print, crash test print. What is it? This is the time when I will print all the templates, absolutely, without exception, and often several times, in order to be sure that they print very well at home. And then that they are pleasant to paint, easy to unstaple, if, however, there are of clusters, finally supports. Excuse me. And also that are nice to paint and solid too. Yeah, really. A whole reflection around the thickness of the lances, teeth, nails, all these relatively thin parts, and that we will deliberately exaggerate in the case of 3D printing to solidify a little bit the whole thing, whether we use cheap resin or expensive resin. Here I have a small example. It is that this is only a small example of the content that will probably be in the Goblin Army, which will arrive maybe at the end of the year if the first Hands project works well, and that as a result I see that it is public. For that we are going to have Goblin Lancers. I'm not going to show them all to you, because the goal is not a spoiler, but I'm showing you a sculpture. I don't know. No, it doesn't matter which one, we don't care. It's relatively simple in sculpture, but it works, and above all, it's easy to paint. We can make mass very easily because they're very clearly at the level of painting. I'm really going to make it simple. I'm going, in my opinion, under a black zenithal layer of white, or maybe it's slab shop. I don't know yet there for the time, and I enjoyed myself a little. Do you see yourself having one with symbols? Who will be the musician? I bother a little about the banners, unlike the Army of Hand, because, well, I progress every time. There I make symbols in relief, history to help with the painting. Again, so you will have Lancers, always 10 different models, reprintable at will, You will have archers, obviously, the packs, and you know, the large rows of goblin wines which were on just 2 lines, where there, well, we have relatively standard gobe again, but it works. There are big hook noses, fairly standard short bows. Same again, for each unit 1-1 carried the standard, a musician, etc. There I am before my eyes. Once again, I am not showing you everything. The Naiarchs, who are proxies. Well, typically for squigs or any other type of creature of this genre, giant toads or others. They are 4-armed creatures. So as I say here, I am still in the crash test phase, so you can see the defects here. For example, I have a crushing problem at the leg. Why? Because in fact I have a lack of support at the right hind leg, and so it's a support problem. This is not a problem related to sculpture, so I am reassured, but suddenly it will make me rework the pre-supportable files, which are also provided with the models, and suddenly Magnard, which looks like this, so with always this side a little terrifying. When they are in a slightly more normal pose, it looks a little bit like frogs, toad in this case. And then there are some on which I put mushrooms, since one of the emblems of this army will be mushrooms. Some even have fungi growing on their backs. So here I am making a lot of different models, and so the Niarch masters who look like this, with species of whips. Trident skull, big club, pan flute. I had a blast on Voila. I don't show you all of them, even if I really want to show you. And you will also have special characters as usual. Which one? I can show you a lord with his great sword, a goblin warlord. Ulala, he's scary and he's terrifying. Well, if I put it next to a dwarf, you can clearly see that it is smaller, but here it is a goblin lord. Do you have any more? Obviously 1/1 shaman, for example, a goblin shaman casting a spell, so relatively simple. Again, there are others, but I don't show you everything. And unlike the hands before, I do something. You're going to tell me you're a spear, you're nice, but they don't have shields. Et parce qu'on répond. He thought of what? To make shields, obviously, and to allow more flexibility on when you are going to print and make your army. And well, actually, I put them on clusters like this, which means that you print them like this, they come out like this from the 3D printer. As a result, you will be able to paint them relatively easily on the chain without too many problems. And then, so if you are picky, you cut them out first, but suddenly to maintain, it's a bit annoying. That's the best. Well, in any case, I'm going to do like this. I'm going to paint my series of shields, then I'm going to cut it. I'm going to do a little retouching at the place where I cut the resin right there, and then I can stick them on my figurines, and especially alternate the different symbols. For example, if this figure 1 I printed in 10 times because I need 100 goblins, well, there is one, another moon shield, another small mushroom, another big mushroom, etc., etc., etc. And the shields, there are 18 different ones as I speak, but the same, it's in the progression phase, so the shields are separate. For archers, it is the same. The archers, right there, we see that they don't have quivers. And, well, it's the kind of small models that I also put separately on clusters next to it, which comes out of the 3D printer like that. You just have to paint the cut, same principle, a small stroke of pliers, small retouching, and then you can stick the quiver either to the belt or in the back. In short, you are enjoying yourself. And then if you even use quivers for other units, because there are various and varied creature riders, there's plenty of stuff. In short, small accessories like that, I will put a lot. So people can really customize their army thoroughly, and then the bases print in FDM, but once again it costs only slab. Well, I won't show you more, I really want to show you the rest, but for the moment we are on the standards. So as you can see, I have a lot of ideas in mind, and there are a lot of other armies that I want to do. I don't have to show you too much because, well, I also have to spread all this over time. I remember that I work alone, I have no one to help me. On the figurine sculpt, it takes an awful long time, but at the same time I love it. I'm not complaining a second time. It is amazing that I have been able to do this job 100% for many years now, thanks to you. But I have plenty of other ideas for armies, including the Sylvan Elves. Why? Because Wood Elves, I took myself sheet on sheet, back when I was playing my dwarves in the 2000s or 2000s. Maybe a little later, right? It must have been 2002, 1005. Yeah, back in the 2000s when I was playing elves, Sylvain, with my dwarves, because I'd get knocked up remotely with the bow, the time to make contact. Well, in short, so elves, excuse me, let me explain why. Then we're going to make a nice army with the Edward Celayers, a bad army with the greenskins, the goblins, the little goblins, then the wood elves. And then we're going to go back to an evil army. At the moment it's still a bit blurry, even though I've already started working on stuff. Ben, I need your opinion, so if you can put me in the comments the kind of old school army you would like to see again, and that I do, then it won't be for tomorrow, eh? It's over for a few months, but feel free to let me know. I have many possibilities. There is one maybe a little bit above the others. It is the Stupid Men. Why? Well, linked to a frustration from when I was a ghost, also from the fact that the Stupid Men, they had released an army which was magnificent. It was only metal figurines and it cost a blind woman to make an army. Because in addition to the gore men, so very small, very weak, stupid men, you had to make packs of 20. It was blisters of 3 figures. It cost a fortune. I don't know at all where it is today. Is it in addition that there are lots of other brands today? Eh? There are more than Warhammer. Eh? We Light Games, which offers lots of things. We have lots of other 3D creators, so that's it. So I have the dumb men that are in the lead, but there are other bad armies that could be very, very cool to do, so feel free to share that in the comments. It is with great pleasure that I will take your opinions. I'll let you go take a look at the project. The link is in description. It is on the site Mind in Factory, a platform at the English base but which is spread all over the world today. It is the #1 seller of 3D files for war games, minifigure games or collectors. This is really the biggest seller of 3D files. The big advantage of Minifactory, although it can sometimes be a little more expensive than others, close to 0.00 euro. The big advantage is that you have your own personal library, your library of 3D files. That is, once you have purchased a 3D file on Minifactory on your account, it is in your personal library forever. That is, you don't have to download it tomorrow to store it on a hard drive and then lose it when you change PC. Not at all, because you just don't have to lose. This is your Minifactory account and you will absolutely be able to re-download it whenever you want. And it also has another advantage, is that if tomorrow I make an update of some 3D models on which I could have left an error, or I make additions of new figures in the pack, and it's directly in your library, you have absolutely nothing to do. They will just need to download the new version and you are alerted every time this kind of thing. So in short, it happens on my Minifactory. Thank you very much for watching this video on my Army of Nature. I hope you like it. I wish you good painting, good game, good print, and see you very soon for new videos. Bye bye.